The family reunion invitation arrived on heavy cardstock, gold-embossed lettering announcing Uncle Richard's 60th birthday celebration at his estate in the Hamptons. Black tie optional. Helicopter pad available for guests. Because of course it was. My mother called the day after I received it. "Natalie, you'll come, won't you? Richard is so proud of the new mansion. He's inviting all the successful family members." I was sitting in my office at the British Embassy in Washington, reviewing classified cables about trade negotiations. Through my window I could see the White House grounds. "I'll try, Mom. Just try to blend in, dear." Richard's friends are all very accomplished. Tech entrepreneurs, hedge fund managers. Perhaps don't mention your government job too specifically? You know how people react to civil servants. I was the British ambassador to the United States. I'd held the position for 2 years, appointed at 38, the youngest person to serve in the role in over a century. I advised the Prime Minister on U.S. relations, negotiated trade agreements, and maintained one of the most crucial diplomatic relationships in the world. But to my family, I was a low-level government employee who'd never amounted to much. Uncle Richard had made his fortune in commercial real estate. My cousins followed him into the business. Derek ran the development arm, Victoria managed acquisitions, and Marcus handled investor relations. They all lived in multi-million-dollar homes, drove six-figure cars, and never missed an opportunity to remind me of their success. "Civil servants are so quaint," Victoria had said at last year's Christmas dinner. "Natalie's out there serving her country while we're out here actually building wealth." I'd smiled politely and changed the subject. Now, looking at the invitation, I made a decision. I'd attend, but on my terms. I called my chief of staff. "James, I need you to coordinate something for Saturday." "Of course, Ambassador. What do you need?" "The Prime Minister is visiting Washington next week for the summit. What if we moved his arrival to Saturday afternoon instead of Sunday morning?" There was a pause. "That's ambitious. May I ask why?" "Family obligation." The PM mentioned wanting to see more of American countryside estates. I thought we could combine business with education. James was quiet for a moment, then I heard the smile in his voice. "I'll make the arrangements, ma'am." Saturday arrived sunny and perfect. I drove myself to the Hamptons. No driver, no security detail visible. My family had never seen them because I'd always kept my professional life carefully separate. Uncle Richard's new estate was absurd. 20,000 square feet of glass and marble, perched on 10 acres with ocean views. The circular driveway was already packed with Ferraris, Bentleys, and Teslas. I parked my modest rental car and walked to the entrance, where Uncle Richard stood greeting guests in a custom suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary. "Natalie." He air-kissed both my cheeks. "You made it. We were beginning to think you'd bail. You know, government workers and their unpredictable schedules. Wouldn't miss your 60th, Uncle Richard. Come see the house. Though I warn you, it might be a bit overwhelming for someone on a civil service salary." He laughed like it was a joke. It wasn't. Inside, 200 guests mingled among the art collection and champagne fountains. My cousins descended immediately. "Natalie." Derek embraced me, reeking of expensive cologne. "Still working for the Queen?" "The King now, actually." Right. What is it you do again?" "Something with paperwork. Diplomatic relations." "Ah." He nodded like he understood, though clearly he didn't. "Must be nice having job security. Not like the real world where you actually have to perform." Victoria joined us in a dress that cost more than a small car. "Natalie, you look nice. Is that from Zara?" "I don't remember." "Well, it's lovely. Very appropriate for your position." She gestured around the room. "Quite different from our usual circles, I imagine. Richard's friends are all legitimate billionaires. Real estate moguls, tech founders. The kind of people who shape economies." Marcus appeared with champagne. "Little cousin. Still living in that tiny apartment in D.C. "I have a residence, yes. But not a real estate portfolio, right? God, I can't imagine just having one property. How do you even build wealth?" He laughed and clapped my shoulder. "Good thing you have family to bail you out when retirement comes around on that government pension." My phone buzzed. A text from James. "PM's helicopter is 15 minutes out. Security is coordinating with local authorities now." I excused myself to the terrace, where Uncle Richard was holding court with a group of investors. The secret to real success, he was saying, is understanding that government is irrelevant. Bureaucrats shuffle papers while entrepreneurs build empires. That's why I steered my children away from public service. It's a dead end for people who can't make it in the real world. Someone asked, "Don't you have a niece in government?" "Oh, Natalie. Yes. Sweet girl but no ambition. Works some administrative job in Washington. We've tried to get her into real estate, but she's comfortable with mediocrity." He sipped his champagne. "Can't save everyone, I suppose." I was about to respond when I heard it, the distinctive sound of helicopter rotors growing louder. The conversations on the terrace faltered. People looked up, confused. The helicopter appeared over the tree line. Not just any helicopter. The Royal Air Force insignia was clearly visible on the side, along with the British flag. A Sikorsky Is-92, the kind used for heads of state. Uncle Richard's face went from confusion to alarm. "What the hell? I didn't authorize any helicopter landings." The aircraft descended toward his pristine lawn, the downdraft sending champagne glasses toppling and women clutching their dresses. Security personnel appeared from nowhere. Serious men and women in dark suits with earpieces, establishing a perimeter. My security detail no longer invisible. The helicopter touched down. The door opened. Prime Minister David Harrison stepped out, flanked by his protection officers. He was instantly recognizable. His face on every news channel, leader of the United Kingdom, one of the most powerful people in the world. He walked directly toward the terrace. Toward me. "Ambassador Ashford," he said warmly, shaking my hand. "Thank you for accommodating the schedule change. I hope I'm not interrupting your family gathering." The terrace had gone completely silent. 200 guests frozen in place, staring. "Not at all, Prime Minister. May I introduce my uncle Richard Ashford? This is his home." The Prime Minister turned to Uncle Richard, who looked like he might faint. "Mr. Ashford. Beautiful estate. I appreciate you allowing us to land. The ambassador spoke highly of your hospitality." The Prime Minister. Uncle Richard stammered. "Guilty as charged." Harrison smiled. "I hope we're not causing too much disruption." Security insisted on the helicopter rather than a motorcade. "You know how they are." He turned back to me. "Ambassador, shall we discuss the briefing materials? I have questions about the trade framework you proposed." "Of course, sir. Perhaps we could use the study." Uncle Richard found his voice. "Ambassador? Natalie is an ambassador." "The British ambassador to the United States," the Prime Minister confirmed, looking surprised. "You didn't know? She's been brilliant in the role. Youngest person to hold it in over a century. The King speaks very highly of her work." My mother appeared from inside, her face pale. "Natalie? What's happening?" "Mom, this is Prime Minister Harrison." "Sir, my mother, Margaret Ashford." He shook her hand graciously. "Mrs. Ashford. You must be very proud. Your daughter has been instrumental in strengthening the special relationship between our nations." She works in Washington. At the embassy, yes. As the senior diplomatic representative of the United Kingdom. He looked genuinely puzzled. "Did she not mention it?" Derek stepped forward, his face red. "Natalie, you said you did diplomatic paperwork. You never said you were the ambassador. You never asked what level. You assumed I was a clerk." Victoria's voice was faint. "You work for the Prime Minister?" "I work with him," I corrected. "I report directly to the Foreign Secretary and advise Number 10 on American relations." More security vehicles were arriving, the Prime Minister's full motorcade having taken the road route. Black SUVs with diplomatic plates lined Uncle Richard's circular driveway, dwarfing the Ferraris and Bentleys. Marcus grabbed my arm. "Why didn't you tell us?" "I did tell you. Repeatedly. I said I worked in diplomatic relations at the embassy. You decided that meant filing papers because you couldn't imagine I might have actual authority." The Prime Minister's private secretary approached. "Sir, the secure communications are ready in the residence. And the Foreign Secretary is on the line from London." "Excellent. Ambassador Ashford, shall we?" I led the Prime Minister into Uncle Richard's mansion, past the stunned guests to the study. Behind us, I heard the eruption of conversation. Disbelief, shock, frantic Googling. Inside the study, The Prime Minister's team had already established secure communications equipment. Classified documents were spread across Uncle Richard's antique desk. Right? Harrison said, settling into a chair. The trade framework. I have concerns about the agricultural provisions. We worked for 90 minutes discussing policy details that would affect billions of dollars in trade between our nations. Through the window, I could see my family standing on the lawn, watching the security perimeter, the government vehicles, the apparatus of international diplomacy that had descended on their party. When we finished, the Prime Minister stood and stretched. Excellent work as always. I feel much better prepared for Monday's meetings. He glanced out the window. I suspect I've rather disrupted your family gathering. They'll survive. He studied me curiously. They truly didn't know? They knew I worked in government. They just assumed it was insignificant because I don't have a real estate portfolio. He laughed. Imagine thinking diplomatic relations between nuclear powers is less significant than property development. He shook his head. Well, I hope this has been educational for them. We walked back outside where the entire party had gathered to watch. The Prime Minister paused to shake hands with a few guests who worked up the courage to approach, then turned to Uncle Richard. Thank you for your hospitality, Mr. Ashford. Beautiful home. Though I must say the most impressive thing here is your niece. The Foreign Office is lucky to have her. Uncle Richard could only nod mutely. The Prime Minister boarded his helicopter. As it lifted off, the downdraft scattered napkins and programs from the birthday celebration. The aircraft banked toward Washington, disappearing over the ocean. The security detail packed up efficiently, vehicles departing in a choreographed convoy. Within 20 minutes, there was no evidence they'd been there except the landing marks on the lawn. And 200 witnesses who'd seen the Prime Minister arrive to consult with the family member they'd dismissed as unsuccessful. Uncle Richard approached me slowly, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. Natalie, we had no idea. I know. The British ambassador. You're the British ambassador. Yes. Why didn't you tell us? I did, Uncle Richard. Many times. Last Christmas I mentioned coordinating the President's state visit to London. You asked if I was making hotel reservations. At Easter I talked about negotiating trade provisions. You asked if I was taking meeting notes. My mother joined us, tears in her eyes. Sweetheart, we're so sorry. We just thought. You thought I was a failure because I don't own property or drive a Ferrari. You measured my worth in real estate portfolios and car payments. Derek, Victoria and Marcus stood behind them, all looking stunned. The Prime Minister knows your name, Victoria said weakly. He called you by name. I brief him regularly. Sometimes daily when situations develop. You advise the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Marcus repeated, like saying it aloud would make it make sense. And the Foreign Secretary. And I coordinate directly with the White House on matters of bilateral importance. Uncle Richard sank into a chair. I told everyone you were a file clerk. I said you'd failed to make anything of yourself. I know. I was standing right there when you said it. Oh God. He put his head in his hands. A guest approached hesitantly, a tech CEO I recognized from the news. Excuse me, are you really Ambassador Ashford? The one who negotiated the cybersecurity framework last year. Yes. That was brilliant work. It became the template for international cooperation. I've referenced it in multiple board presentations. Thank you. He turned to Uncle Richard. You're related to her and didn't know? How is that possible? Uncle Richard had no answer. More guests approached, suddenly interested in the woman they'd ignored all evening. The junior civil servant had transformed into someone worth knowing. I excused myself and walked to the edge of the property, looking out at the ocean. My phone rang. James. Ambassador, the PM wanted me to convey his thanks for your flexibility on the schedule change. It worked out well. He also mentioned that your family seemed surprised by your position. He found that curious. They don't pay much attention to government work. Clearly. He paused. There's already press interest. Someone at the party posted about the PM's arrival. Should I have communications prepare a statement? Keep it simple. The Prime Minister had a working meeting with the ambassador. Schedule accommodation. Nothing more. Understood. I hung up and found my mother beside me. Natalie, please. Let us make this right. How, Mom? You've spent years dismissing my career because it didn't align with Uncle Richard's definition of success. You celebrated Derek's real estate deals while ignoring that I was negotiating international treaties. We didn't understand. You didn't want to understand. Understanding would have meant acknowledging that success looks different than property portfolios. He was crying openly now. What can we do? I don't know. But it's not something that gets fixed tonight. Uncle Richard appeared looking aged. Natalie, the guests are asking about you. They want to know. They're interested in your work. How they are. When I was just a civil servant, no one cared. I know. We were wrong. Catastrophically wrong. His voice broke. I'm so sorry. I looked at my family, all of them gathered there, finally seeing me clearly for the first time in years. I need to go, I said. I have briefing materials to review for Monday's summit. Will we see you again? My mother asked. Eventually, when I have time. My schedule is rather demanding. International diplomacy doesn't follow a 9 to 5. I walked to my car, leaving them standing in front of the mansion, their party forgotten, their assumptions shattered. As I drove away, I could see Uncle Richard's guests still milling around, phones out, probably searching my name, reading about my work, learning what they'd missed while they were busy being unimpressed. My phone buzzed with texts. Derek, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. Victoria, can we talk? Please. Marcus, I feel like an idiot. You're actually important. I didn't respond. Monday morning, I was in the White House Roosevelt Room with the Prime Minister, the President, and their senior staff, discussing defense cooperation and economic policy. When we broke for lunch, the President pulled me aside. I heard you had an interesting weekend. Something about a family party? The Prime Minister needed an earlier arrival time. It worked out. He smiled. I also heard your family didn't know about your position. That must have been quite a revelation. Educational for everyone involved. Well, for what it's worth, we're damn lucky to have you. The UK couldn't have sent anyone better. That evening, as I reviewed cables in my embassy office, my mother called. Natalie, I've been doing research. Reading about your work. The treaties you've negotiated. The crisis you've managed. Sweetheart, I'm so proud. And so ashamed that I didn't know. I tried to tell you, Mom. I know. We just couldn't see past our own narrow definition of success. Your uncle has been beside himself. He wants to apologize properly. Maybe someday. But not yet. I'm still processing years of being treated like a failure by people who should have supported me. She was quiet for a long moment. I understand. We'll wait. However long it takes. I hung up and returned to my work. Trade agreements. Security briefings. The actual business of maintaining the most important diplomatic relationship in the world. My family could decide if they wanted to be part of that life. But I was done proving myself to people who'd already decided I wasn't enough. I'd built something extraordinary, a career of genuine significance, work that actually mattered. Whether they ever fully acknowledged it didn't change the reality. The Prime Minister knew my value. The President knew my value. And most importantly, I knew my value. That was enough.